Would you pay 3 times the ticket price for a first class train ticket versus an economy ticket for a slightly bigger seat? Is it even called an economy ticket on a train? Anyway, you've landed in the right place because I thought I'd try it out. And it turns out you do get more than just a slightly bigger seat. Let me tell you whether or not I believe it's worth the additional cost and should you go first class. So I decided to purchase a first class train ticket for a trip from Bristol to Bracknell, which includes changing at Reading. You may have noticed that I mentioned London in the title. This wasn't intentionally misleading. The train I took carried straight onto London, so I can give you a first-hand account of this service between Bristol and London. On top of that, I can talk about what it's like to have a change with a first-class ticket. Let's start by talking about cost here. At the time of purchase, about a week before my trip, a standard single ticket was around £46, and the first-class ticket that I purchased was £75. So about 33% more. I also use this as an opportunity to purchase a rail card, which is essentially a yearly membership that gives you a set 1/3 discount off all railway tickets. It was £25, and since the third off my ticket was nearly £25, I basically considered it free. Now, I actually decided to go for a first class ticket because I was on my way to one of my best mates' stag do's. I had a bunch of stuff I had to carry with me, and I also needed to get a little bit of work done on the train. I certainly did get some odd looks carrying a bag of Nerf guns and a cardboard cutout of Emma Watson. Not having any hands free, walking around, and also not wanting to attract any more attention to myself, I decided not to film. So I've sourced pictures and videos from around the web to give you something visual to look at whilst I chat. I arrived to a very quiet Bristol Parkway station. I was pretty surprised given the train which went to London departed at 8:30 on a Friday morning. I assumed the station would be full of late commuters. I had my ticket on my phone, having used the Trainline app, and headed straight to the ticket barrier. Luckily, I asked someone working at the barrier if there were any coffee shops on the other side, because it turns out the only coffee shop is on the outside of the barriers, and I had about an hour to wait. This brings me to my first point about having a first class ticket. If you're departing or changing at Cardiff Central, Penzance, Truro or London Paddington, then you will have the use of their first class lounges. However, departing from Bristol Parkway, a major city train station that has a direct high-speed train to London, there is no lounge. The first class lounges at these train stations offer complimentary drinks and snacks, comfortable seating, newspapers and live TV to keep you occupied. Now, I know this sounds a bit pompous, but given the high ticket cost, you'd think they would want to provide a slightly more comfortable place for the first class passengers to sit and wait to justify the difference. Given the space that they have available and the ease and relative low cost of installing some slightly nicer seating, I think it would be well worth doing. Okay, so if you've made it this far through, please consider subscribing to my channel. I plan to make more videos like this, and you subscribing is a vote for me to do just that. So to start off, my journey was like any other. I made use of the coffee shop and then entered the platform side of the station, 15 minutes before my train was set to depart. Here's where I wish I'd bothered to work out what the zones are. On the board that displays the stations your train will call at, it mentions that first class was in zone 9 on carriage J and K. Had I taken the time to ask the station staff where that would be, I would have avoided the panic walk run to the other side of the platform when the train did arrive. Watching the first class carriage zoom by as the train pulled up and wondering if the train would ever actually stop probably wasn't a great start to my relaxed first class rail experience. So I make it what feels like 1 mile to the other side of the platform and onto carriage K. My seat was number 53. This is the single seat next to the window. At this point, I should probably mention this was a Great Western Railway service, so I imagine first class seat configuration for other trains may differ. The whole carriage was empty other than one other person who was sat on the 4-seat table adjacent to where I was supposed to sit. I decided not to sit next to someone else given I had the whole of the rest of the carriage to sit on, so I took a single window seat a few rows back. If anyone joined at the next station and needed that seat, I would just move to my allocated seat. So the seat itself was great. I hadn't been on a big train in years, but when I was younger, on the train between my local towns, if you boarded at night, sometimes they asked you to go sit in first class just to make it easier for the ticket person to walk through and check your ticket. Now, those seats used to be made from a kind of leatherette plastic. These seats, however, were made from a blue material which felt much comfier. There's also a padded headrest, which was a nice touch. The seat in front was a reasonable distance away, so room and space was definitely not a problem. I'm 6 foot, but I reckon even taller people would feel really comfortable here. In front of me was a static table, also some plug sockets, which was a godsend because shortly after taking this picture, my laptop showed the dreaded low battery warning. There is also Wi-Fi available on the train. I didn't do a speed test, but from a quick Google, the reviews are a bit hit and miss. However, I had strong phone signal the entire time and was able to easily stream my Apple Music the whole way. When I boarded the train, I noticed a tea trolley, which had 2 hot jugs and a bunch of disposable cups on it. I assumed this was a kind of help yourself style thing, but I decided to wait and told myself if nobody comes by the time my stop in Swindon, then I'll just go and help myself to the coffee. After about 2 minutes, 2 members of staff came hurrying past with a fully stocked trolley. I asked them if I could go help myself to the coffee on the other trolley, and one of them said, "Don't worry, I'm on my way to you in a moment, sir." So the trolley carried on past into economy class, where I assumed this was the paid for option for everyone else. A couple minutes later, the man I spoke to was back, and this time he pulled the tea trolley I noticed earlier with him. He offered me tea or coffee and juice. He also asked what I would like to eat. Now the options were pretty vast considering it was the morning. There was some what I assumed were bacon sandwiches, there were pastries, cakes, and also 2 types of porridge. I went for syrup flavoured porridge, a coffee and some orange juice. It was all served fairly nicely, albeit in disposable packaging. Not long after I'd finished, we were pulling up to Reading Station, which was where I needed to change for Bracknell. Now if you've ever been to Reading Station before, you'll know what I mean. The station is absolutely huge. Luckily, I had about 20 minutes before I needed to board my next train because it took me about 10 minutes to walk from one side to the other. Again, similar to my time in Parkway, there was nothing different about my experience, and again, nowhere different to sit and wait for your train. Now, I was given a seat allocation on my first train, but the second train, my ticket on my phone told me to take any available seat. And so I assumed there was no first class carriage on the short journey from Reading to Bracknell. I was right, there wasn't a carriage, but there was a small section with 8 first class seats around 2 tables at the end of the first standard carriage. Luckily for me, it was completely empty, so I hopped in and sat down. To be honest, the seats were exactly the same as economy class table seats, but they were a kind of blue plastic leatherette with a headrest cloth thing. The train was about 20 minutes to my final destination, and I certainly wasn't expecting any refreshments. To be honest, I actually didn't see anyone the whole time. It was a bit of a shame really, because I guess something else small that they could do to differentiate the ticket difference is to just come by to the carriage and say hello and check that you've settled in. So then, what's my verdict? Is a first class train ticket worth the extra money? Well, I don't think it's a simple answer. If I compare the first class experience to a standard or economy, whatever it's called on a train, experience, to be honest, there's not a lot of difference. I get a nicer seat and some free snacks. So if I booked a table seat in economy and purchased the same snacks and drinks from the trolley as it came past, it would have cost me about £50. If we ignore the rail card, because you'd get the same 1/3 discount regardless of class, then that is a saving of £25 over the £75 first class ticket, which is about 33%, something like that. So the question is, would I pay £25 for the guaranteed nicer seat and the likeliness of a quieter cabin? Probably, but only on an occasion like I found myself in, where I wanted to be able to work a little and it's not a regular occurrence. If there was a lounge at my departing station, then actually I think there would be a strong case for the premium, if nothing other than to not need to wait on a cold platform sitting on an uncomfortable hard seat. However, if £25 is material to you, and by the way it certainly is material to me, then I probably wouldn't upgrade to first class on a regular basis. Okay, so thanks for watching my review of the first class train ticket that I purchased. If you have made it this far, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel. It costs you nothing and it shows me that I'm doing a good job.